Good evening. We are Team News Robots, and I'm Brian Adams.
I'm Becca Dudley.
I'm Kevin Hartman. And I'm Steve Crespo. Alright, so things we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the background of our product and who our sponsors are. We're going to go over our process, our design, what we're doing now as far as our development, and what we'll be doing later in the future. And then we'll have a screenshot demo for you, and then we will answer questions. So our sponsor is NewsText, and we have two team members, Ian and Chris. And NewsText is a news company that takes a bunch of data from all different types of media, newspapers, online, books, and puts it all together for different professionals to come and use their sources of media. And this is their one of their apps called Roll Call. They have many different mobile applications that they create for different companies that want to come and use their framework to create their own news app, because it's very expensive to get a app created, and NewsText has found a way to make it easy and accessible for some companies to get their own news app out there. And we actually have the app on a phone, so people can touch with it, play around, see what it's all about. Hopefully get a better idea.
Who's on their website?
Yeah. So what we have here is we have the just a splash screen, and then the main page is the news feed with a bunch of different stories that you can click on, and that's a news story. And then just a couple more screenshots. The different content on the left side might be hard to read, but they're different saved searches that you can have, and then also you can search for your favorite news stories. And we're showing you this because our product is to make an Android version of this application.
And they want it to behave very similar to their iOS application. And it's cool because when you do searches, you can do knots and ors and ands and stuff like that as well. It's very new.
So I already talked a little bit about the product, but some things that I didn't go over. Some of the main features of the app, that it is fully customizable from the back end. This comes in handy for when companies need to get their different custom app made by NewsText.
With colors and stuff that's customizable. Mainly the menu on the left side that we showed a screenshot of earlier. That all comes from the back end, and it's dynamically read in, and the menu is then set up straight from the initialization of the app when you open it. So it's pretty cool and customized.
And something to note, we had a discussion with our sponsor initially regarding whether we should do a native Android app or if we should try to do something with JavaScript and
HTML5.
Yeah, and like sort of build that route. We examined the customer base that they had, and they actually did a little bit of research to figure out who the majority of their users are. And while most people were using iOS on the iPhone and iPads, pretty much the rest of their users, if not like probably less than like 5%, were using Android. So we decided to go with native Android app for purposes of having the app behave well and being responsive, so that we have a good user experience.
And the only real benefits to like HTML5 and CSS applications are that you can make it in one place and then port it to different platforms. And since they already have an iOS application, really half of the equation was already there. So I don't really need to go any further. So I'm going to talk to you guys and go through our process, basically where we started and kind of how we've gone through the semester with everything project. So let's see. The first thing, requirements solicitation. So the first 4 weeks we spent soliciting requirements. So since they already had an application out, we had one medium that we could look to for requirements. So that was one thing that we looked at. So those 4 weeks we would look at the application, see different features that were going on, and then ask them about them and see exactly what they wanted. This roll call app that we showed you, because we said earlier that they have multiple ones. I think they have like 4 or 5 on iOS App Store right now. That's the one that they wanted us to mirror the most. So get the menus more like that one. There was different functionalities too here, but that was the one that they liked. The most. So they wanted us to mirror that one.
Yeah, we basically did like a breakdown of what are the features during those 4 weeks we explored a lot of features that were in the iOS app, and we prioritized them the way that we thought that they would be in terms of importance and like overall benefit to the user, and then we presented that to our sponsors and kind of negotiated some of the features in order to limit scope and things like that, and figure out sort of what order we would do things in.
And also during our requirement solicitation phase, they gave us their code, their iOS code that connects to the backend and makes the request to the server and gets all the stories and news feed and all that information from the backend. And so we looked through that code also during our requirement solicitation phase to try and see, basically just to ask questions and learn more about their application. So that helped us also with the requirements. Alright, so here are our risks now. These are our 5 biggest risks that we had. So knowledge of Android, which was the biggest risk, was knowledge of Android was our biggest risk because only 2 of us have done Android development, and nothing too in-depth or extensive. For some classes, like Brian's done Agile, so he did Android development there, and Kevin has done some Android development on his own. But other than that, we haven't touched Android very much. So we figured that would be a big risk because there are a lot of nuances in building Android applications. You can easily mess up your application by, I don't know if any of you guys know about Android development, but like creating all activities instead of like fragments and stuff like that. So that was our largest risk. Then since all their iOS code is actually in Objective-C, we said learning Objective-C is another risk. Not knowing it is another risk because then it takes longer to understand their system, and which in turn will help us understand how we should design our system. And then the other ones are other classwork, so we all have other classes. I don't know if you guys put this in your risk, but that was a big risk that we thought would be that would get in the way. And then poor design, which is a risk for any project, I think, but the mitigation strategy obviously is to spend enough time on your design and requirements soliciting to make sure that you have the system fleshed out in the design. And then vacation, that was just another one because we knew Thanksgiving break would be coming up in the future, and that might hinder our development.
Okay. So for our methodology, we chose to use Scrum. We chose to do this for a couple of reasons. One, all of us have experience with it, and it allows you to very easily accommodate for change and improvements, which seems to work well with the nature of this app being a port from another implementation. And our sponsors was probably the biggest push for that. They use Scrum internally. Their team for the iOS app is very small, like 4 people. So we matched up well with what they were interested in. And in order to implement this, part of what we do is bi-weekly stand-ups. On Tuesdays, we have an engineering stand-up with our sponsors, and we teleconference them. And usually for those stand-ups, we try to provide some sort of deliverable, whether it be documentation or an actual version of the app that they can install and see how that's working.
Not every stand-up.
Not every stand-up, but we try to provide something. And then on Fridays, we have sort of more private, in-depth stand-up where we talk about issues as well.
Usually just us four.
Yeah, just us, not our sponsors. And we're more intimate about what the issues are and stuff with the team, things like that. And then we provide deliverables, the end of sprints, and also, like I said, we try to provide them on Tuesdays as well. So the format of our Scrum, I guess, is we try to do, for sprints, we try to do 4-week sprints, or we do 4-week sprints. And we initially come up with 3, and we tested that out a little bit during the early phase of the first sprint, and we didn't really get everything in that we wanted to, and we kind of had to push a bit to the next sprint. So we kind of talked about it and realized that, especially from the beginning, it would be necessary to have longer sprints, and that seems to be a lot better now before we sprints. And we're doing 7 total, and for each one, we try to get, we estimate that each person can do about 8 hours of work a week, which totals 128 hours of work time per week. And we're going for 100 per week to allow each person about 7 hours or so slip time. Which is expected. So here's an example of some of the bookkeeping that we have, or that we came up with initially for our sprint planning. We have the tasks, which correspond to user stories, which they're in a different document, not here, but they describe tasks that make up, or subtasks rather, that make up those stories. And so we try to break those down as much as we can, but yeah. And then for the main tasks that are comprised of those, we have the hours listed in this document, and then the total hours total up.
So some of you may be wondering why Sprint 1 starts at week 7, since we said we only spent 4 weeks for listening requirements. We had kind of a Sprint 0, which was just quick architecture of what we thought the system would look like. And so that took 2 more weeks.
Kind of just like getting your feet wet type of thing.
And instead of story points, we use hours as well.
Yeah. And this is just another example.
This is the current sprint. Well, we just ended.
Yeah, we just finished this from the most recent deliverable we used today. So yeah, we pushed a couple of things ahead.
As you can see, user story XX was on the previous sprint plan. We didn't fully complete it, so we had to complete this sprint. It's not as many hours.
Yeah, we re-estimated hours and everything. Okay, and then some of the tools that we're using to get the work done that we need to do and bookkeeping as well. we're using Bitbucket to actually store the code and we use Git for our version control system. We're using the Git flow strategy. That's something that our sponsors decided that they wanted us to use because that's what they use. It's just a nice way to make sure that your history is in a good format and that you're managing features and branches and everything is easily. It's very easy to work on features and then merge them when they're done and stuff like that. We use Chili for issue tracking, which is a service that's provided to us by our sponsors, and it provides issue tracking a wiki that describes how we're documenting some things that you wouldn't put in the code or comments, but just like descriptions of different technical aspects. So we use that to sort of track some of those details, and our sponsors also track some of that with their initial iOS version of the app, so we can use that as reference and also give the sponsors visibility to see what we're working on in terms of issues. And then Poppy we use for deliverables, which is an app that allows you to allows us to take a build of our Android code and then upload it so that sponsors can install it directly from this hockey service and do testing on it and see how they like it, give us feedback. Just for the sake of time, I'll just kind of gloss over this week. But Chili allows you to track tasks in terms of time estimates, descriptions, and who's going to do the tasks. You can update the tasks with how much time you spend individually, and you can create sub-tasks for tasks to get more granularity. And there's just an example of what that looks like. There's a couple tasks that were spawned after this sprint. So that's okay. So then to sort of get more into system design and sort of what we're looking at, there are two components. We have Android application and the HangerKit Java framework. That's what we wrote the requirements down into. And the first one is the actual user-facing application, which is what the sponsors want in the end. That's what the product needs to be. And then HangerKit is a framework that we determined that we could write and agnostic to Android that can communicate with the server using the formats that it understands in order to get application data from the server. And yeah, so.
All right, so Steve and Kevin worked on the back end, and they designed that, and me and Becca were on the front end of the app, and we took care of the views, the data layer, the logical layer, and this is just a very simple view of one view of the architecture that shows these layers.
This will be your last slide.
Okay. So, sure. So I guess we'll just cover a little bit of the design of HangerKit based on the iOS implementation, and it's responsible for making requests to the server. Well, making requests on behalf of the application to the server. It has factory methods for setting up the requests, which get passed back to the application layer, and then it will schedule them on behalf of the application, and the application will get callbacks, which have resources, which would be things like users and other models that would come back from the server. So, that's
all right. Let's move to questions for them.
So you mentioned how they already have the backend in place for the iOS version of the app. Did you find that what they had in place was adequate or was simple to use for an Android application?
So we're kind of finding that their code that they use their version of HangerKit for iOS. There's a lot of I guess, Objective-C sort of design pattern type thing that you can see there. Some of them don't translate well to Java, but we found that it was helpful still to see just how they decided to do that architecture.
It's nice to have like a template there, kind of what you should be doing and how you can interface with it. So, yeah. What problems have you run into?
Mostly we run into like not knowing things like iOS. None of us really knew this. We had to like learn that. Most of the problem we run into is realizing we were doing things wrong in Android. Everything we done in like Sprint 1, we had done as activities, and turns out we did them as fragments to make option menu work, so we had to refactor that.
Well, we're going to mitigate that.
I should mention that our implementation of Pancake Java is coming along very well, and async it's pretty much you can make asynchronous requests and stuff like that, and the resource translation and XDR interpreting and stuff that I wasn't able to cover is all there.
I might have missed it, but what metrics do you guys cover?
So right now, I think we just are having, we have, well, we're going to make a burn down chart. We kind of,
we're doing stories per sprint. We have some like kind of examples like
story points per
server developers, bugs per test, or errors called for test. Who shows on meetings and hours per like hours over the estimated time.
You said you weren't able to get like requirements or design from the iOS product that was developed. Will you have a chance of getting test cases and test plans from iOS so that you can use that to test out your Android app?
I'm not. We haven't sure. I guess we haven't really even brought that up to our sponsors yet to see if we could get test cases. I mean, that'd be very helpful.
That one hockey app that we showed you, they do use that for testing, so they can upload their application to it and send it to a bunch of devices, and it'll test it there.
But in terms of using the actual iOS code and what test cases they might have, they haven't given us test cases for that framework. So we might reach them for some of that. But yeah.
One more question for them? No? Okay, thank you.